Have you ever felt like you've just been washed up on a totally desolate beach after a massive life change?
Oh, yeah.
Like maybe it was a brutal breakup or a profound loss.
Or just a stinging failure.
Exactly. You're just sitting there on the cold sand looking out at this gray, indifferent ocean, and you're wondering if you will ever find your way back to civilization.
Because you feel entirely untethered from the world you used to know.
Right. And welcome to today's deep dive, where we are going to explore exactly that feeling and, more importantly, how we survive it.
It really is a universally human feeling, isn't it? That profound isolation.
It is.
That sense of being completely stranded by your own circumstances, where the life you envisioned for yourself feels like it has just shipwrecked.
Yeah, shipwrecked is the perfect word. Today we are looking at the 2017 poetry collection called The Forgotten Shore by J.P. Lindstroth.
It's a heavy one, but so rewarding.
It really is.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to guide you through what the author himself calls an archaeology of emotions. We're going to excavate through these intense layers of ancient Greek mythology, visceral anthropological history.
Artistic dialogues.
Yes, and a profound personal grief. And through all of this, we're really looking to uncover a universal message of human resilience.
The title of the book, The Forgotten Shore, it perfectly sets the stage for this whole exploration. Lindstroth uses this as his core metaphor throughout the entire collection. The Forgotten Shore is that desolate, mythical place where we feel completely abandoned.
Like a piece of bleached driftwood.
Exactly. Discarded by life or by love, it represents the absolute aftermath of devastation.
But, and I think this is key, inherent in this desolation is a profound sense of hope.
Yes.
The hope that even from this barren place, love and meaning can actually be found again. So let's unpack this framework. In the book's preface, Lindstroth brings up the philosopher Michel Foucault.
Right.
Which, might seem like a pretty heavy academic starting point for a book of poetry.
It is, but what's fascinating here is how Lindstroth twists Foucault's famous concept of an archaeology of knowledge.
Right, because Foucault used that idea to dig into the history of societal institutions.
Exactly, like how cultures thought about madness or medicine over centuries. But Lindstroth isn't analyzing societal institutions here. He takes that massive historical lens and points it directly inward.
He's asking the reader to excavate their own human emotions.
He is. He's showing us that processing grief or even processing deep love is never a straight line.
It's a dig.
It's a dig. You have to sift through these heavily compacted layers of memory, trauma, and experience. You don't just get over things.
You unearth how they built you.
Right. And one of the heaviest shovels he uses for this excavation is ancient Greek mythology.
He uses those ancient, larger-than-life stories to process incredibly raw, modern emotions.
It gives the personal pain a mythical scale.
It does. Take the poem Elysium, for example.
That's a beautiful one.
He paints this picture of the afterlife, but it's this joyous, honey-lit pasture, specifically reserved for artists, musicians, and poets.
Right, everyone dressed in flowing white robes.
Floating freely, drinking fine wine that has been vintaged by the gods themselves.
It is presented as this ultimate peaceful reward for the agonizing fever of creativity that these artists suffered through during their mortal lives.
But he doesn't let the reader linger in paradise for long, does he?
No, he doesn't. If we connect this to the bigger picture of the book, he is constantly balancing the highs with devastating lows. Contrast that beautiful pasture with his poem Reaching the Sun.
Which explores the Icarus myth.
Exactly.
That one gives you pure existential whiplash. He describes the striving of an entire lifetime just to attain the unrivaled apex, the zenith of achievement.
You're flying closer and closer to the sun.
Feeling the warmth of success, or maybe the heat of a perfect romance, only to plummet instantly into an oceanic abyss of nothingness.
That plummet is the sudden, jarring reality of loss. You fly so high in a relationship or a passion, and when the wax inevitably melts from your wings, the fall is terrifying.
Which brings us to the poem Amnesia.
Right, dealing with the river Lycée.
The mythological river of forgetfulness in the underworld. That poem serves as a real warning to the reader. It asks why we spend so much wasted time wandering and roaming in our own sorrow.
It's a call to stop drinking from that river of forgetfulness.
Yeah, how often do you find yourself completely paralyzed by sadness, entirely forgetting the brevity of the life you are actually living right now?
It forces you to confront how much of your limited time on Earth you are willing to surrender to the past.
Which is actually a perfect segue into how Lindstroth engages with the physical world around him. because he isn't just a poet writing from a distance.
No, he's a visual artist, too. He created the striking cover art for this very book.
And that visual background bleeds into his writing so clearly. He takes us right off the mythical shores and steps directly inside the canvas.
He uses his words to translate famous visual art and the often chaotic, messy lives of the artists themselves.
Let's look at his poem, Picasso's Fragments. He uses jarring, almost terrifying imagery here.
He describes a green, disjointed nose.
And flayed fingers.
Yes, and white chattering teeth. For context, the poem is addressed directly to Dora Maar, who was Pablo Picasso's famous muse.
Right.
She was the subject of many of his most fractured, distressing portraits during their tumultuous relationship.
Lindstrath uses her terrifying cubist portrait as a metaphor for a relationship that is just collapsing in on itself in crushing grief.
He calls them Sartrean fragments.
Nodding to the philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre to show how this breakup feels like an existential crisis. It's a literal shattering of identity where you are left staring at the disconnected pieces of yourself.
When your heart breaks, you look in the mirror and you don't even recognize how the pieces fit together anymore.
It perfectly captures the psychological distortion of a bad breakup. And he takes this artistic exploration even further in the poem, Dialogue in Colors.
This is an imagined, highly heated conversation between two artistic titans, Vincent van Gogh and Paul Gauguin.
Here's where it gets really interesting. He masterfully sets up their contrasting perspectives right from the start. Van Gogh says, "I dream in yellow."
And Gauguin instantly replies, "And I in red."
It perfectly encapsulates their incredibly volatile friendship. You have these two massive egos with totally incompatible views on what art even is.
Trapped together in the south of France, Lindstrath doesn't shy away from the gritty, visceral details of their time together.
It's almost claustrophobic. He places the reader right inside that musty yellow house in Arles. You can smell the sweat and the turpentine.
They are getting drunk on cheap wine.
Arguing endlessly about whether to paint from imagination or to paint from reality.
And then the poem builds to that horrific, famous climax.
Yeah.
The text describes Van Gogh leaving his bloody ear on an ivory pillow,
A pillow that slowly turns a rusty ochre color from the blood.
before giving the severed ear to the prostitute, Rachel.
It is such a gruesome, desperate act of emotional unspooling. And following that tragedy, the poem shifts to Gauguin's perspective.
We see his bittersweet escape to his Polynesian Elysium in Tahiti.
He is surrounded by these magnificent island scenes, the bright hibiscus flowers, the heavy smell of coconut oils in the air.
But even in this lush paradise, the poem reveals he is still deeply mourning the loss of the red-bearded little Dutchman.
It shows that you cannot simply outrun your grief by changing your geography.
Exactly. Even in his personal Elysium, the grief of the forgotten shore lingers right there with him.
But Lindstrath doesn't just use his art to look inward at personal heartbreak. He also turns his lens outward to the real, often brutal world of history.
This marks a massive shift in the book's landscape.
It does. It focuses on his background in anthropological fieldwork.
Lindstrath uses this section of his poetry purely to bear witness.
We see this most powerfully in the poem Mayan Memories 1, which captures the historical trauma of the Guatemalan genocide.
The text doesn't editorialize. It simply lays out the haunting realities of the historical trauma.
The poem is built around this haunting refrain, which Lindstrath borrows from a quote by the renowned anthropologist Paul Farmer. "They buried us with our eyes wide open."
The text details the vanishing of specific Maya peoples.
The Ixil, the Conjabal, the Chuj.
It explicitly notes that 200,000 people disappeared.
The poem recounts the terrifying specifics of these events, the 440M army raids, the terrifying presence of the men who came at night, and the sheer panic of the indigenous communities.
One of the most devastatingly specific images the author shares in this poem is of a grandmother.
Right.
The army brings her murdered son to the house in a coffin, and the grandmother reaches in to check the flexibility of his arms.
She's checking for rigor mortis to see exactly how recently he was killed.
And that horrifying realization is what prompts the family's desperate flight to El Norte.
The text captures the deep, lingering generational trauma with that repeated line, "They buried us with our eyes wide open."
It is a stark, chilling excavation of historical memory. It asks the reader to look at the worst of human cruelty without blinking.
But what is truly striking about this collection is how wildly the pendulum swings.
Oh, absolutely.
From the profound, silent trauma of the mountains of Guatemala Lindstrath pivots sharply to an explosion of vibrant life in his poem, Mucassia.
It is a total sensory overload, and it hits you right after the heaviness of the previous poems.
This is a love poem dedicated to his Brazilian muse, and he completely immerses you in the pulse of the Amazon. He describes the mighty river as a grasping and crushing god,
You can hear the throaty roars of the howler monkeys in the canopy,
the shrieking of the harpy eagles.
and the grunting of jaguars hiding in the blue shadows of the jungle.
He is using the sheer, overwhelming force of the jungle to represent the overwhelming force of his love.
The environment itself reflects the intensity of the emotion, but he doesn't just stay in the ancient wild jungle.
No, he contrasts it with the modern reality of Brazil.
Suddenly, you are transported into the sweltering, skyscraper-shadowed streets of São Paulo.
He shows how his love for this muse spans the entirety of Brazil's complex, multifaceted identity. He even takes us to the palm tree-lined beaches of Bahia.
Describing the possessed dancers and the beating drums of the Candomblé Creed.
For those unfamiliar, Candomblé is a vibrant Afro-Brazilian religious tradition.
By bringing in the dancers and the drums, Lindstrath creates this intoxicating mix of the ancient, the modern, the spiritual, and the deeply personal.
It is a celebration of life in all its noisy, complicated glory.
And this ability to zoom in and out from the vast historical landscape to the deeply personal, from the noise of the Brazilian streets to the quietest rooms in a house, brings us to the most intimate, tragic layer of this entire emotional excavation.
Yet, in the poem Ode to a Child, Lindstrath brings the reader into the silent nursery of a lost child.
The juxtaposition he uses here is heartbreaking. He fills the poem with incredibly innocent, gentle items.
A bunny with a bent ear.
A stubby carrot, comforting rhymes from Dr. Seuss.
And the heavy weight of unopened diaper boxes.
Those unopened boxes hit so hard.
They really do. These items are juxtaposed with the reality of a child who is gone, making the nursery feel like a temporal prison for the narrator.
The poem circles around this devastating refrain, "You my lost face, but not forgotten."
It is the ultimate forgotten shore. The narrator is just lying on the floor, surrounded by these symbols of a future that will never happen.
Begging the child to walk with him in green fields.
The psychological weight of that kind of localized, specific loss often leads to a terrifying mental paralysis, which Lindstrath explores in the poem Thinker in Hell.
He physically embodies the narrator as Auguste Rodin's famous thinker statue, but places him right on a precipice in Dante's Inferno.
Fisted to chin, as the poem says. Have you ever been stuck in a loop, having an argument in your head from 5 years ago?
Multiply that by 1,000.
Right. The narrator is completely paralyzed by what he calls obligatory, imposed contemplation. He is endlessly, agonizingly ruminating over a scorned lover and his own foolishness.
He is stuck on that crag, watching the cyclone of his own thoughts, unable to move forward or backward.
This raises an important question. How does one break free from that paralysis? How do you leave the forgotten shore when the grief is that heavy and the mental loop is that tight?
Lindstrath suggests that the answer lies in stepping outside of the human experience altogether.
He uses nature to radically zoom out from human suffering. Let's look at Sisyphean Dreams and his poem about the Loxahatchee River.
He vividly describes the turbulent waters of the natural world.
You see a white and black osprey hovering in the air and then diving violently into the water for a fish.
You hear box turtles just plopping off a rotted green log into the hazel water.
And then there are the alligators, moving just under the surface like stealth submarines in the tea-tinted water.
He observes these scenes with intense, detached focus. The river doesn't care about his broken heart or his rumination.
But he also zooms in even closer, to the micro perspective. In the poem My Little Ant Astray, the author just sits and watches a tiny ant walking in circles.
It's almost comical after all the heavy grief, but it's profound when you really think about it.
He sits there wondering about the ant's invisible chemical trails, and he actually warns the little bug out loud about the looming sudden doom of a human shoe coming down on it.
Think about a time you were completely overwhelmed by grief or stress. Did you ever find yourself staring blankly at a bug on the sidewalk or watching a leaf blow in the wind?
There's a profound psychological mechanism there. Focusing on the sheer scale of the natural world, whether it's the vast, uncaring power of a thunderstorm building over a river, or the tiny, fragile struggle of a single ant trying to find its nest.
It helps shrink our own massive emotional burdens down to a manageable size.
Sometimes, recognizing the utter indifference of the universe to our pain is the exact thing that allows us to breathe again.
We realize the world is still turning, the ants are still marching, and we are just one small piece of a much larger ecosystem.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, navigating your own shores?
It brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this deep dive. The Forgotten Shore is, at its core, a testament to the sheer resilience of the human spirit.
Lindstroth's journey shows us that a person can endure the paralyzing hell of a lost love.
They can bear witness to the deepest, most horrific historical traumas without turning away.
They can suffer the agonizing, feverish highs and lows of artistic creativity, and they can survive the silence of a lost child's nursery.
And yet, despite all of that, they can still find the strength to stand up, leave that desolate beach, and discover new muses and new meaning in the vibrant world.
It is a reminder that being washed up on the shore is not the end of the story.
The archaeology of emotions proves that beneath the compacted layers of grief, there are always layers of vibrant, enduring life waiting to be uncovered.
You just have to keep digging.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder today. Earlier, we talked about the River Lethia, the mythical river of forgetfulness that washes away all memory.
Right.
If you were standing on your own forgotten shore, surrounded by the wreckage of a heartbreak or a failure, and you were offered a cup of water from that river, would you drink it?
Would you choose to erase the pain, even if it meant erasing the lessons, the profound loves, and the very history that built you?
Or is the agonizing pain of the forgotten shore a necessary, unavoidable price we must pay for remaining truly human?
It's a question worth digging into.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.